said, I became very passionate about talking about the reality of childhood sexual abuse and how we can prevent it. Because my own child, my firstborn son, was victimized by a trusted family member. And it was because of that incident, as I stood in the mirror pondering who I was as a mom and how did this happen to my kid. Because it would, Saxon and I, it was just him and I. I was married to his dad very briefly, less than a year. And it was always Saxon and I against the world. So when I looked in the mirror and was like, wow, how did this happen to my kid? I am the mom that pays attention. I'm vigilant about who he stays with and where he goes and what he does. And it was through the education I received when I realized that my son had been victimized that I was like, wow, this happens every day, everywhere. There is no socioeconomic boundary that buffers children from being victimized. In America today, 1 in 10 children will be victimized before they are 18 years of age. So when I talk to schools and when I see groups like this and I count off 10 heads, and I go, okay, well, each mom maybe brought 2 kids here today. Like, those numbers add up in a hurry. So the reality of childhood sexual abuse is very, very real. In this post-Sandusky era, they call it now, so does everybody remember who Sandusky was, the football coach in Penn State? And they call this the post-Sandusky era because that news story blew the doors off of the hidden factor of sexual abuse. And the fact that it was boys that were victimized helped drive the reality home that it really happens. So 90% of children that are victimized by someone in your circle of influence. So they are someone, they are a family member, they are in a group we participate with, they're people we do life with on a regular basis. So learning the red flags and being aware and learning to plant seeds of safety in your children from the very earliest stage is so important. One of the things we can do that are most important with our kids is, from the very earliest stage, identify their body parts for what they are. The same way we teach our kids, this is our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, these are our breasts, this is our vagina. Everybody say it out loud. Vagina! It's not a mystery. And for little boys, or it's a very big mystery, no. And for boys, identifying their penis as their penis. A knowledgeable child is an empowered child. Okay? So the more we teach them the accurate name of their body parts, they have power. They have power because if someone were to violate their boundaries, they have the ability to say, Uncle Tommy touched my breast, not Uncle Tommy touched my cookie or my tutu or my Tootsie Roll. We can get lost in the language if we don't use accurate terms. Also, in planting the seeds of safety with our children, it's very important from a very young age that we start clarifying for them what their personal boundaries are, and that it's okay to say no if they don't want to snuggle or sit on someone's lap or give somebody a kiss goodbye. In my generation of growing up, and I'm a card-carrying member of the AARP now, so in my generation of growing up, it would have never been okay to not give Grandpa a hug goodbye or to not give Grandpa a kiss on the cheek. But it is okay for us to build those boundaries into our children. If they don't want to hug Grandpa goodbye today, maybe we can teach them to shake Grandpa's hand. That's another great, powerful life skill to teach our children. When they have an alternative, to give them an alternative of something that would have their space be encroached on. Okay? It's also very good to talk through situations with your kids. If you're going to have a babysitter over, so you have already for months and years been talking about their personal space, and you clarify with your babysitter what your expectations are. So perhaps they are, if we have family movie time, so when your kids are maybe watching their family fun movie with the babysitter, there's no snuggling under blankets. Children are frequently victimized because hands of the perpetrator are underneath blankets, hidden, and they have free access to children. So encouraging your child to snuggle with their own blankie when they're watching a movie in their own personal space. Okay? And I'm not saying be hypervigilant and you don't even snuggle with your kids with a blanket. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is instilling in them the ability to say, I want to sit in my own space with my own blankie. That's okay. Okay? So, the reality of childhood sexual abuse being 90% of children are victimized by someone in their sphere of influence, it's very important that we always have our eyes wide open in our relationships. Paying attention to those little signs that maybe make us go, well, that was a little weird. That person's a little too helpful. Or are they? Just paying attention. When your gut sends you an alert, right? That instinct was built in for a reason, and it comes from a higher power. Listen to your gut. If there's a little catch that you're paying, and don't be too quick to disregard it. Listen to it. There's a reason that catch is there. Okay? When we talk about the reality of childhood sexual abuse, for many people, it can be a trigger to past events in their own life, and it can cause us to sometimes not want to look at it clearly for what it is. But you need to know this and hear. A child who is victimized, even if that child is a grown-up big girl now and a card-carrying member of AARP, if that child was victimized, if that woman was victimized as a child, that was never that child's fault. Children do nothing to merit or ask for or insert themselves into situations that cause them to be victimized. That is clearly on the perpetrator. No child or grown-up little girl does anything to ask to be victimized. So for any of you in this room who maybe know someone or have experienced it yourself, hear me clearly. You did nothing to merit that action happening to you. It is not your fault. For me, coming to that realization as a grown-up woman that in my past I had been victimized, but for all intents and purposes, until I was 45 years old, I had no real recollection of that. It was so firmly tucked away. But as I became more active and taught more people about the reality of abuse, and that it does happen, and that it's not children's fault, and the more knowledgeable I became, the more I was like, oh my gosh. And I was raised, my parents, my mom was 14 and my dad was 16 when I was born in 1964. So at this stage in my life, I know my parents did the best they could with what they had been dealt, right? I was lucky to have a grandma and an auntie that I had the privilege of spending lots of time with. Thank goodness. Because certainly I made it this far in life as a direct cause and effect of being with them so much. But because my parents were so young, and my dad was a rock and roller, so back in the day, so he was a musician and we traveled a lot. We always lived someplace different, so there wasn't firm, consistent relationships and communities where we lived. So frequently, so my mom could go to the bar and watch Dad, who was a skirt-chasing boy in the band. My brother and I were frequently left with whoever. The grandpa down the street, some guy she befriended at the coffee shop. I mean, like at this stage of my life, I'm like, wow, really, Mom? You like left me with people you didn't even know, you know? So, and that is not my fault. It was not my brother's fault. So as I have learned and grown and done the work to identify with the vulnerable situations I was left in as a child, and as a direct effect resulted in myself being victimized, and then my son being victimized, which my son, I was vigilant, he was never left with a stranger. We did kinder care, we did Boy Scouts. I had to be the helper lady because I didn't trust anyone. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So when I learned that 90% of children are victimized by someone they know, and stranger danger is really, for all intents and purposes, not that it doesn't happen, but it happens very little. As I learned about the grooming behaviors of how people access our children, in my incidents, the grooming was done by a male. It was an uncle. So way super helpful. Offered to take Saxon to his tutoring lessons. He could drive him to baseball if I was busy with the baby. Really showered him with very nice gifts. I was young, married. We didn't have the ability to buy him like the new, that was when Nintendo was the big thing, right? So my hindsight now tells me, wow, that was maybe over generous, or what they call grooming behavior. Okay, so being aware of stuff like that. People who isolate your children from you or encourage your children to keep a secret from you. It's okay to have surprises, but it's not okay to have secrets, right? A person who is grooming your child will start small. They may be someone who you will be involved with for years before they were to harm your child. So just being aware of that grooming behavior, little red flag behavior, violating boundaries, tickling, even when children say, no, no, stop, but still tickling and not stopping, pantsing kids, which we might think is just, oh, redneck boys having fun, but really that's not okay. Technically, pantsing someone is sexual assault if you want to take it to the nth degree and if it's repeated behavior. Snapping bra straps at school, not okay, or at home. Someone who takes a little too much interest in a child and how their body is changing, right? We may talk to our spouses or our parents about our children as their bodies change through development, but if someone is addressing it like there's just a difference, and you will know the difference if it happens. Okay? Talking freely and openly with your kids about safe situations and unsafe situations. It's important that we empower them with the truth and that we talk through scenarios with them. Because then if a situation does happen, it's in their Rolodex of information in their brain, and they will recall it. They will recall that, wow, Mom talked about this situation. Talking to our children before sleepovers, right? Not leaving the common area, not going behind a door with an older sibling or with someone else's parents. Child abuse most commonly happens one child, one adult. So staying in a group is safety, and emphasizing that to our kids. Talking to our kids about it's okay to close the door and lock it when they're changing. There's nothing wrong with that. And if we're not planting those seeds of safety with our kids all the time, they won't know the difference. We can't just assume that they're learning. Talking to our kids openly and honestly about the actual mechanics of sexual intercourse. They say every child should understand how the penis, vagina, and how intercourse works by the age of 8. 8 is great. And when you think about, okay, that's a little shocking, isn't it? 8, 3rd grade. Did you know the average age a child is victimized is 9? And if that 9-year-old knew what was going on and they understood the names of the body parts and mom and dad had told them, wow, I know that's not okay. That's for grown-ups. That's for when you're big and when both people are consenting and want to do it. It's not for when I'm being bullied or manipulated or coerced into a situation. Okay? So having those conversations with your kids. And trust me, when I learned that, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? But with my Nick, Trish, and Abby, it is, you know, it became a culture that was normal, and we talked about it. You talk about it 1, 2, 3 times, 5 times, the giggle factor's gone, right? There's no longer a mystery. It's, you know, it's just a matter of fact of who we are as humans, and it really does. It's just the way it is. And you talk about it enough that it's normal, and you take the giggle factor away, like they get it, right? And these kids grow up, I see these kids, and you know, I'm the mom whose phone rings. Mom, there's this girl at school. We're going to go get milkshakes after. Can you come talk with us? You know, because there's so many kids that no one is speaking the truth to. They don't understand that it's not okay for Uncle Mikey to touch their breasts. No one's telling them it's not okay. You don't have to let him do that. You don't have to be fearful. You are not alone. It's okay to say no. It's okay to speak out. So the more knowledgeable we make our kids, the more powerful defenders of themselves they are. So talking to your potentially 8-year-old child, does that scare you?
A little bit.
Legitimately, right? Oh my gosh. The only thing my parents or grandparents ever said to me was, Susie, don't get knocked up. Well, okay, but what's like the prerequisite, right? Like, I was like, what is that, right? So obviously a very different time and very different parents. But that is not an uncommon reality, I believe, for many of us in this room, right? So, because we are learning how powerful we can make our children by giving them the tools they need to use their voice and say, no, please don't touch my bottom. I don't like that. Please don't do that. I don't like that. The more knowledge we give our kids and the more powerful they become, your kids are not going to be the kids that are vulnerable. And your kids are going to be the children who are making a difference in their community. And you're going to be the ones making a difference in your neighborhood because you are aware of right and wrong, and you're not afraid to establish a healthy boundary. So that is how we can hugely make a difference in this generation, and this generation of young women that are coming up, empowering them to speak the truth and to say no and to call bad behavior what it is. Okay? On your chair, there's the Safe 10 little card, and there's a handout for talking to kids about safe behavior. These handouts, this Stop It Now is a wonderful organization. So anybody with a smartphone, with internet access, I encourage you, go to stopitnow.org. They have a treasure trove of information to really help you establish safe standards with your kids. They have wonderful talking tips. They have great reading resources. They have a wonderful tool that is called the Family Safety Plan. It's a very simple worksheet. It walks you through how to talk to your kids or your husband. Maybe some of you only have little kids, or excuse me, little kids, this is Mops. Silly me. These are the conversations you have with your spouse, and those Adults in your sphere of influence that you have now, you have a plan, you're talking it through. You know what you're going to do. You're becoming knowledgeable about red flag behaviors. Stop It Now has gobs of resources. They also have a 1-800 number if you need to talk to someone. They also have a wonderful document, What is Childhood Sexual Assault? It words it all out for you, explains it very clearly what it is. Sexual assault of a child is not just physically touching them. It can be using the spoken word in vulgar ways towards them. It can be showing them pornography, written or movies. It can be voyeurism type stuff, showing them exhibitionist type stuff. All of that is sexual abuse of a child. It is not okay. Okay? Stop It Now has great resources. Please, before tomorrow night, when your head goes on the pillow, I want you to go to their website and become familiar with it. Okay? So when something happens, you are familiar with the resource. When you're at the playground being duty and a mom says, gosh, I had this feeling and I wonder if, you can say, oh, I know this great tool. You know, you can walk them through. You can be the difference changer in your community. Yes?
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you bring that concept up to your kids? Do you wait till the situation arises and then you talk to them, or is it when you're in the car and you're just like, hey?
All the time. Talk to them about it all the time. It's in the, there's so many instances today where we have sort of that open door. You know, there's a news story on. My common approach with my kids throughout history has been, wow, I saw this story today on the news, and in the story there was this guy who was going to the playground, and like he was hanging out a lot, and one of the moms noticed one day that this guy had like approached her daughter when she was on the swing, and he tried to touch her in her private areas. So I just use, just an example, right? All the time. And did you know, honey, did you know that's not okay? What would you do if you were at the playground and someone approached you? What would you do? Talking through those situations with your kids and letting them come up with the solution, even if you sort of guide them, but letting them verbalize what their solution is will empower them, because they will retrieve that in their Rolodex in a hot hurry if they are ever in a vulnerable situation. Yes?
So I'm part of the Moms Next group with Mops. So my kids are from 7 to 19. I'm wondering if Stop It Now addresses any of the social media, the
Yes.
Snapchat, selfie.
Yes. The wonderful way pornography is attacking our youth and our vulnerable children through those cellular devices. Shocking. And yes, it does. Talking with your kids openly about sexting. What is it? I guarantee you your 9-year-old knows what it is. You know, talking to them openly about it. The little pictures the girlies take of their ample assets, let's call them, and sending those pictures to their friends. Those fully exposed ample assets, if they're taking pictures and sending them to their friends, is technically pornography. They can be arrested for that. It is not okay. Talking them through that, what is not okay. You know, send boys taking pictures of you that you're unaware of, like in the hallways at school. Like there were stories of boys taking pictures underneath skirts and then sending them out. Shocking, but we're not surprised, right? Because of those little technological devices and how they can be used. Talking through all of those situations with your kids. Okay, I know I have to wrap up. Very important, before your kids are sleepover age, establishing a safety word with them. That no matter safety word or safety phrase, okay? So, this is maybe, little Chloe is going to her sleepover, but something happens and she's very uncomfortable. But she can't call you on the phone and say, Mom, something happened and I'm really uncomfortable. So you come up with a safety phrase or something that Chloe understands no matter what. If she calls you and she needs to be picked up or he needs to be picked up, no matter what, you come. Okay? For pets, let me see, I've received four phone calls from moms who have created this. And it's recommended through Stop It Now, or it may be a Stewards of Children thing. The safety phrases or word. One of the most profound calls I got was from a mom somewhere else in Washington. And she says, I walked Chloe through our safety phrase, and it was, I need my blue blanket. Really obscure. So Mom gets a phone call at 4:30 in the morning. Mom, I need my blue blanket. Well, Chloe, where are you? So Chloe was supposed to be in Seattle at her dad's house, but the dad had stopped and spent the night at his brother's house. And his brother's girlfriend was there and her teenage son. Teenage son went into Chloe's sleeping space in the middle of the night and fondled her. So at 4:30 in the morning, when Chloe got to the phone and she called her mom and said, I need my blue blanket, I'm at Uncle Tommy's house, Mom goes. There's little girlie sitting on the sidewalk waiting for her mom to come, but she had escaped an unsafe situation, and because her mom had planted those seeds of safety and she had repeated dialogue with her daughter, she was able to say, Mom, Uncle Johnny's girlfriend's son put his fingers in my vagina. She was a knowledgeable victim. A report was made, and the system followed its course because she was knowledgeable, brave, and educated in the process. She knew it was okay to tell her mom. That's why it's so important that we have these ongoing conversations with our kids and talk about it, right? Talk about it. You know, you go home today, if you have older kids, wow, I heard this lady today, you know, I had no idea. Did you know 90% of kids that are hurt by someone who knows them? That it's not stranger danger? This gal I met, you know, her son was victimized at the age of 9 by her husband's brother. She thought he was a good guy, and he wasn't. Are you brave enough to tell me if someone's not a good guy? Can you just promise me you'll tell me? It's okay. I understand, like there's bad people in the world, and they're all around us. They're not in somebody else's neighborhood. They're not in somebody else's church or somebody else's library or somebody else's swim team or somebody else's football team. They're around us all the time. So I just encourage you, keep your eyes wide open, plant those seeds of safety, have those dialogues with your kids, call body parts what they really are, okay? If any of this has triggered stuff for you, which there's always someone affected by this when it's talked about. You are not alone. There are so many good, awesome resources to navigate our stories, and the healing can be done. And there's great power in the healing and walking through our stories and using that for good, right? It's like the little devotional she read this morning, Beauty for Ashes. You know, those stories aren't wasted. Those stories give us power and the ability to make a difference in our sphere of influence at this point of our life, because we know the truth. We've been there, and we know the difference, and we can be the change. Okay, so I'm going to be around. I have some books on the back table, great resources for reading to kids. There's one that is little fishies in a bathing suit, and you can load it up on your smartphone, and it reads the book to the kids on your smartphone. It's super cool. But there's all age-appropriate books there. There's a brand new resources out for your elementary age kids called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, which goes back to the pornography stuff. Wonderful, wonderful tool. So take a look at those, and all the books I order are available through Amazon. Okay? And then there's a handout for your leaders. The End Harm handout, I give you 6 bundled packs, which leaders can read through. There's great resources. I put it underneath your laptop. If a child discloses abuse to you, how to proceed. Okay? So a privilege to speak to you today. My business cards are also on there. I can be reached by email. And I also post safe tips. Stewards of Children, Linden. So if you search me on Facebook, I am always posting something that's good learning stuff. Okay? It was a privilege to speak to you today, and I'll be around for a bit afterwards.